So, section 11, we started with question 5. What were the characteristics of Mayan politics and religion? What did the temple, the giant jaguar, and the castle tell us about the Mayans? So, if you may recall, this was based on a video clip we watched that I then summarized. But remember, the Mayans, they're kind of like the Greeks. They don't have a single empire, a single government. They're divided up into different states. But what's cool is they managed to develop an advanced agriculture that let them in the jungle develop advanced cities. Remember, that's very difficult to do, but they managed to do that. Um, so, like I said, you've got these city-states and these kings that have a shared culture, but no unified government, so they often were engaged in war with each other. They also had a religion that focused on sacrifice, including human sacrifice, and they believed that they owed a blood debt to the gods. Basically, the gods had used their blood to make human beings, so it was right to offer the gods' blood, human blood, back. I used as an example to talk about their advanced civilization two buildings. One was the Temple of the Giant Jaguar, which was this huge stone temple built in the middle of the jungle, which is pretty impressive. You can only have a lot of people working with stone if you have enough people growing food to support those workers. So this shows the wealth and power and advanced civilization of the Mayans, that they were able to build this kind of impressive structure, especially considering they were basically at a Stone Age level of technology. They were still able to build these impressive structures. They had the wealth and power that are necessary to do that. The other major structure they had was the castle. And you'll recall one neat thing about the castle was that it was this big temple, and on the equinox, when there's equal day and equal night, there was the light would cast in such a way that it would look like a snake was going down the stairs, and then it would illuminate one of the statues of a snake's head. This is the snake god, which was god of the rain, which was a very important god to the Mayans for reasons we'll talk about later. And so that's pretty impressive, right? That their math knowledge of math and astronomy were such that they were able to build a temple so that on particular days during the year, I believe there's two equinoxes, the light would shine in that particular way. And it's not like, once you build the temple, you can move the darn thing. It's made of stone, right? They had figured out a way to do this, to plan it ahead of time. And remember, different parts of the structure of the temple connected to the cosmos. So there were like 365 steps because their calendar had 365 days in it. So this also shows how religion was important to them. The next question, what problems with water did Mayans face? How did they deal with it? So the problem that they faced were several. First of all, there's no major rivers in the jungle where they were, so they couldn't rely on rivers, which is what most early civilizations rely on for water. Second, they couldn't really dig wells because the water table was so low that they couldn't dig a well deep enough. Instead, they had to rely on rain, right? And the problem with that is that in the jungle, there was a rainy season and a dry season. So it either rained all the time or it didn't rain nearly enough. So the Mayans had to figure out a way to capture that rain during the rainy season, hold it, store it, and distribute it, ration it out so that they could get through the dry season. And they managed to figure out how to do that. They were able to develop this very complex system of reservoirs and irrigation that would allow them to store water when it rained, and then get the water where it needed to be when it was dry. And that allowed them to build this very advanced civilization. Who were the main gods of the Great Temple? For what reasons did the Aztecs practice human sacrifice? What problems did it cause? So remember, and this was also based on a video, the Great Temple had two gods, the god of war, because the Aztecs fought a lot, and the god of rain, because like the Mayans and others, they were often dependent on rain to give them the water they needed. So those were the two major gods, the god of war and the god of rain. Now, the Aztecs practiced human sacrifice for a couple main reasons. One was, first of all, in terms of religion, they believed that the gods needed them to offer them blood and hearts and other things, and if they didn't offer that to them, the world would end. So preventing the world from ending is, I guess I'm not condoning, of course, human sacrifice, but if you're going to commit human sacrifice, I mean, that's a pretty good reason to prevent the world from ending. But also remember, this was political. These sacrifices were public. Both friends and foes were invited. And through them, the Aztecs were sending a message. Remember, they're mostly sacrificing prisoners that they captured in war. Don't go to war with us. If you go to war with us, you're going to lose and you're going to get sacrificed. So don't mess with us. Be a part of our empire and be happy about it. right? So this is in a sense meant to intimidate and hold their empire together, right? Intimidates their friends and their foes, right? The people who they control are going to not fight back because they know they'll lose, and their enemies are going to not try and fight the Aztecs in the first place. Now, this does work, but the problem is when your empire is held together through fear like this, people will turn against you when someone scarier than you shows up, right? The Spanish will come, they're scarier than the Aztecs, so a lot of Native Americans who don't like the Aztecs will support the Spanish against the Aztecs, right? So this is the problem. They are not able to build another Roman Empire. Remember, the Roman Empire integrated people through citizenship by giving them a share in power. That made them feel like they were part of their empire. If you were one of the people the Aztecs conquered, you didn't really like being a part of the empire, and you would really like someone else to come in and kick the Aztecs out. And eventually that happens when the Spanish show up. Okay, question 12. Who is Pachacuti? What commanded the enemy army he fought? How did he defeat the enemy? Right, so Pachacuti was, and actually I'm going to keep going, because these questions all are on the same slide. What sorts of weapons did the Incans use? What held the Incan Empire together? So the Pachacuti was basically the guy who started or I should say, who laid the foundation for the Incan Empire. The Incans existed, but they were fighting their enemies, the Chanca, who wanted to destroy them. But Pachacuti managed to defeat the Chanca, and he defeated the Chanca by knocking down the enemy army's commander, right? So Pachacuti was able to defeat his enemy by knocking down the commander. Now you may say, why is it you say what instead of who commanded the army? And the answer is simple, because the enemy army was commanded by a mummy, right? So Pachacuti was able to knock down the enemy mummy that caused his army to flee. They believed that their powerful mummy commander had been defeated. And then that allowed Pachacuti to develop the Incan Empire and put it on a solid foundation. Now, you may remember from that video clip, the Incans were primarily armed with stone weapons, right? They were primarily armed with stone weapons. Now, what held the Incan army together, a lot of it was the system of roads they built, the fact that they had a powerful army, but also, remember, they spread Incan culture, and especially they insisted that people worship the sun god, right? They wanted people to worship the sun god, which Mayor Pachacuti believed he had been chosen by the sun god to defeat the Chancas. He thought he had a special mission to build up this empire. And so they required, much like Hammurabi required of the people he conquered, other people to worship this god. Now, the next set of questions was based on another video, so I'll take them together. How are people classified and organized by the Incan government? What is required of them? What does Quito like about the empire? And that I should have written, what does the man like about the empire? That was a mistake on my part. What doesn't he like? What happened to the girl who received the golden llama? Why? So remember, people were classified by what kind of work they could do, right? So if you were a young child and you were limited in the kind of work you could do, they would set you to make like traps or to gather crops or something like that. If you were a healthy man, though, you may be put in the army. If you're a craftsman, you might be forced to make golden llamas, right? So people were classified based on what kind of work they could do. And they were organized into these like systems of 10, 100, and 1,000 to help control them. And they were required to pay taxes, but the taxes were in the form of labor, right? Your tax that you had to pay was a labor tax. You had to actually do work. So it's not like you paid money, you paid labor. So you may remember the man, I shouldn't say Quito. Quito was the name of the city. What does the man like about the empire? What doesn't he like? One thing he didn't like was being forced to work for the empire. He didn't like paying taxes. He didn't like the labor service. He didn't like the fact that the Inca had come in and taken some of his land, right? The Inca took a lot of their land away from them. He did like that the Incan brought more security, though. He did like that. He didn't like being forced to worship the sun god, but he did like that there was more security, and also because there was more security, there was more food. Now, like I said, this guy had to make the golden llama. What happened to the girl who received his golden llama? Remember, she would be offered in sacrifice. Right here, unlike the Aztecs, these sacrifices weren't really meant so much to intimidate people. They were meant to give back to the gods who had given human beings life. So this girl was not a war captive. She was just a girl who, I think her father volunteered her for this honor. And then she was treated really well for a year, received a lot of beautiful gifts, lived in luxury, and also received this golden llama. And then she and a young boy were married to each other, and then were basically, you'll recall, they got them drunk on beer till they passed out, and then they sacrificed them there. So it wasn't meant to intimidate people. And then finally, we had this question. Someone asked who was Jingo Sase. Or Jingo Sase was the lady who helped um, Hiawatha. Remember, Hiawatha was trying to build peace among the different tribes of the Iroquois, and people didn't trust him necessarily because he was a man and therefore a warrior. But you recall Jingo Sase, she was this woman who lived at a crossroads where people from different tribes traveled, and she would like have them all over for food at her house. And so, she kind of got them to get along with each other, and lots of people from different tribes respected her and would listen to her. And so she was key to getting people to listen to Hiawatha, right? Her support of Hiawatha meant that people would listen to him because they said, okay, we trust Jingo Sase. Jingo Sase says Hiawatha is a good guy. We're going to listen to Hiawatha.